Showtime! The Capital G Show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here. So a lot of you guys were probably wondering if I had forgot about making this video. Absolutely not. This is the top 5 decks of the format, the Yu-Gi-Oh hierarchy. Let me just preface this whole video by saying I did not include the VIRs on here because they have not ever been legal for the TCG, so it would just be a little asinine for me to go on a whole soliloquy about what tier that they might be on, so don't expect for them to be in this list. Number 5, I've got 6 Samurai on here. I feel like the deck has gotten more consistent with the third smoke signal. You know, it adds the consistency to dropping those turn 1 lockdown synchros that the deck makes so nicely. I'm talking Naturia Beast, legendary 6 Samurai Shien. They have an auto win card in Gateway. You can auto win in 2 different ways. You can auto win with the VIRs or a Boros loop. For those of you guys who don't know, it's basically the same thing as the wind up Hunter loop with Mighty, where they just pick apart your entire hand. You also can just make stupid advantage with Gateway when you open with it. You can put so many offensive pressure cards on your opponent, Kizans and Grandmasters and stuff. You know, top that off with a Shien, and it's like by turn 2, basically your opponent needs to clear your field or just get OTK'd their next turn. Not to mention they can't use their best spell because Shien can just negate it. I think that this deck has fantastic matchups against Dark World, Prophecy, and Sectors. You play against Dark World and Prophecy, you make Naturia Beast and you just auto win. I think that 6 Samurai does have some deficiencies. It's a horrible top decking deck. It's boss monster or bust, because unless you have Gateway, I mean, you're not really doing shit unless you have Naturia Beast or Shien on the field. This deck isn't going to be one of those beatdown decks that just runs over its opponent like that. It also has a very poor Mermail matchup because this deck relies on its being able to lock down spell and traps, and Mermail Atlantean, I mean, that deck completely focuses on monster effects, so obviously that's a problem match. Number 4, I've got Macro Rabbit. I feel like a lot of this is kind of associated with the deck proving that it can do it in the past. I feel like Macro is still going to be one of the, if not the best anti-meta cards of the entire format. I mean, this singular card stops Mermails, it stops Insectors, it stops Dark World. Like, it stops the entire deck for one card. You know, it stops all Fire Fist effects, it stops all hand traps. So one card in Macro can just shut down so many decks' key cards. You know, you also have 2 of the best XC boss monsters in the game, and Dokia and LAGGIA. Those cards can obviously just win games on by themselves. I do think that you have a horrible Prophecy matchup because LAGGIA can only cover so much ground, and if High Priestess hits the field, you've basically lost the game. The engine is less consistent than it's ever been and throughout basically Dino Rabbit's entire lifespan, because you know, you lost Sangan, which was your instant tutor to Rabbit. You now have 1 less defensive great card and Solemn Warning being limited. So I feel like Dino Rabbit is probably the deck that's most likely to fall out of this top list, because you know, the deck's consistency has just been going down and down and down, and right now I think the deck has a heavier reliance on macro than it's ever had before. Fire Fist is number 3. One of the biggest reasons Fire Fist is on here, it has the best non-limited searching spell in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, Tenki is far better than Proving Ground, Emergency Call, Smoke Signal. It's better than all of them cards. Not only do you get to search your big pool of monsters, but you also get that 100 attack game. And what I really like about all the Fire Fist monsters, at least the good ones, is they all have built-in +1 abilities, but they have multiple ones. I mean, the effects of the Fire Fist core monsters cover so much ground. I'm talking Gorilla, Dragon, and Bear. Not only do they have effects where they can send the Fire Formation cards to get pluses, like, you know, blowing up your opponent's cards or special summoning things, but you also have cards where, you know, you also have effects where if you attack over something, you inflict damage, or, you know, you activate another formation card, you get the Surge. I mean, they just have pluses upon pluses upon pluses. They have a huge resistance to all the common side deck cards that people like to side in: D-Fissure, Veiler, Maxi, Goes in Match, Robbery. They don't really do anything to this deck. I mean, you pretty much have to go off the deep end with macro, and if you play a deck like Insectors, you can't side macro. It'll hurt you too much. So since we're looking at the deck in the span of an entire format, you also have to remember that this deck is getting more support cards. Unlike a deck like Dino Rabbit, you know, this has more support coming for it. You get Wolfbark, which is just going to open up the 1 card XC plays so that you can get Tiger on the field very quickly. It's going to open up Shockmaster plays. Firefish Chicken is just stupid. And speaking of the boss monster, he has multiple effects too. I mean, it's like every card in this deck has 2 great effects. So, you know, I really like it. I feel like Firefish inherently don't struggle with anything. I don't think that there's any one deck that they completely wreck, though. I also think, on a random note, the whole vanilla rabbit engine, I think that it's probably gonna run thin. I think it's gonna run its course by the end of the format, and it's probably gonna lose a lot of its usefulness. Currently, number 2, I've got Prophecy. Spellbook Judgment Day is an absolutely retarded card, and anyone who had any involvement with the creation of that card should be dragged into the middle of the street and shot. It is a auto win card when used correctly, much like Gateway of the Six, Card Destruction, Future Fusion, and Chaos Dragons. You have a searchable boss monster who can go +1 every turn. Not to mention, you have a themed revival card that special summons that boss monster back, so it's incredibly difficult to deal with when she gets on the field, and even if you kill her, you can get it right back. You have arguably the best field spell in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That I would say is easily on par with Gates of the Dark World, because it essentially gives you a second draw phase, and then when it gets destroyed, you can search another monster potentially, so even when it's destroyed, it still pays for itself. The deck is incredibly hard to stop when it gets rolling. Also, one of the big things that this deck has going forward is there's a very small amount of cards that you can side deck for this deck when you're going second against it, so that's always in the favor of the Prophecy player. You know, outside of Droll and Lock, what can you side deck against Prophecy if you're going second? Like, they can explode all they want, and there aren't any cards that you can really use to stop them from doing that. And this deck also has a very strong matchup against most decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! It does have some problem matchups in Dark World and 6 Sams. 6 Sams can obviously make Naturia Beast and just win, because outside of High Priestess, you can't really do anything. And if they have a Bottomless, a Warning, or something like that, you basically just lose. And Dark World can just, they can play E-Virus. E-Virus just, it destroys your entire deck, because all they have to do is call spells and you lose everything. Your monsters aren't doing anything, they'll just resummon Grapha and then it's just over. And you also have a strong possibility of losing the Shockmaster plays, and if people know you're playing Prophecy, like after game 1, they're gonna rush the Shockmaster as quickly as possible. I'm talking decks like Wind-Ups and, you know, Fire Fist. And my number 1 deck of the format, I have to go with Blackwings. I think they have a very good matchup against a lot of the decks in the format. I think that their synchro options are very good. I think that the deck is fast. I'm just kidding. My number 1 deck of the format is MERMAIL. From top to bottom, it is the most consistent deck in the format. I think that it's one of the only decks in the format that has consistently can put OTKs on the board. You know, I'm talking cards like ABYSSMEGALO and Marksman facilitate those OTKs, whether it be ABYSSMEGALO's double attack ability or the fact that Marksman can attack, then summon another monster that can potentially clear out the game. This deck has an inherent resistance to blind MSTing and just to like back row moving in general, because you have the Abyss Sphere play that's always in the back of your opponent's mind. So it's like they can't just, you know, throw their spell and trap removal all willy-nilly for sake of, you know, going neg 1, which allows you to completely maximize cards like Torrential Tribute and Mirror Force. So, you know, you can catch your opponent trying to overextend thinking that you have Abyss Sphere, and then you can just bring the house down on them. The deck has an incredible amount of searchability with cards like Dragoon, Spikes, Abyssdius, Mermaid Bitch, Spear. I mean, you can pretty much get to anything you want in this deck at any time you want. ABYSSGAIOS adds a completely new dimension of defense that the deck has never had. It adds a little bit of lockdown, and it helps some of those matchups that, you know, the deck could struggle with before. And I think that the deck has very good matchups against basically anything that doesn't name Macro Cosmos, you know. Macro being that one card that completely shuts the deck down. I like the monster lineup from top to bottom. You've got Beat 6 Searchers, backer removal, monster removal, synchro makers, but this deck does have some deficiencies. It's completely graveyard reliant, much like Dark World. You know, you need your graveyard to resolve any of your effects, so Defense or Macro completely shut the deck down. I do feel like there is an inherent target on MERMAIL's back. I feel like people think that it's the top deck, thus it will be sided for super hard. And the deck is very susceptible to Max C, as, I mean, basically everything in the deck makes a special summon. I'm talking Abyss Sphere, Abyss Squall, you know, Deep Sea Diva, Abyssdius. Let me know what you guys thought of the list. Maybe you don't agree with it at all. Let me know what you think should have been in here, or, you know, if you think I need to make some corrections. Click the like button if you enjoyed the video. It helps me spread the word to people who may not have seen the video yet. If you haven't subscribed, maybe this is the video that made you come around. Thank you and have a nice day. Subscribing makes life happy.